Welcome to stage 14 of Misspoke, a cycling podcast during the period of the coronavirus pandemic. A collection of stories, anecdotes, opinions, guidance, advice, rants, raves, and all kinds of things that I can think of. And I'm going to start today with chapter 11 of my novella about the Liège-Bastogne-Liège Sportive, which is called The Monument, and which you can get from Amazon either as a paperback or download it to your Kindle. It was dark and the rain had stopped, but it was still quite cold as they walked the darkened streets of the village to the restaurant. As they passed a side street, they saw a blue Skoda parked in a driveway. "Isn't that our Skoda?" said Clovis. "Blue Octavia, VRS?" "Could be," said Eric. "Skodas are quite common." "Not the VRS. Same engine as the Golf GTI. Did you know that?" "I hate cars," said Eric. They pushed open the door of the restaurant and went inside. It was quite dark inside with a candle burning on each table. There were half a dozen people in there. The waiter showed them to a table and lit the candle between them. "Bonsoir," he said. "Bonsoir," said Clovis. "Do you speak English?" "But of course, monsieur. I get you English menu." "Steak and frites for me," said Clovis. "Medium rare, and a salad, and 2 beers." "Same for me," said Eric. "Medium, and I'll have 2 beers too." "Groucho Marx," said the waiter. The door opened and Jordan and Chrissy walked in. Clovis didn't recognise them at first, out of their cycling gear, but it was them all right. Jordan in dark trousers and a pale sweater, Chrissy in a skirt and a loose blouse. Jordan saw them first and came over to their table. "Hello again," she said. "It's the enemy." "I hope not," said Clovis. "This is a nice surprise. Will you join us?" "Sure," said Jordan. "We'd love to." "Hi," said Chrissy. "How was your ride?" "Horrible," said Eric. "I thought it would never end. You?" "We loved it," said Chrissy. "It was everything we expected it to be and more." "Do you drive a blue Skoda?" said Clovis. "No," said Jordan. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," said Clovis. "We've seen one a few times, is all. We thought it was following us." "You thought," said Eric. "I didn't think." "Why would we follow you?" said Jordan. "That's what I was wondering," said Clovis. "Where are you staying?" "You move fast, soldier," said Jordan. "Not far." "Sorry," said Clovis. "We have an Airbnb place just up the road. I didn't know there were any hotels around here." "There aren't, Clovis," said Jordan. "We live here." "Oh, how did you know my name?" "Sorry," said Jordan. "You called me Clovis. I wondered how you knew my name." "You told me on the ride at the feed stop, remember? You called me River Jordan." "Ignore me," said Clovis. "It's been a long day. Have some wine." He poured a large glass for her and one for Chrissy. Under the table, Chrissy slipped off her shoe and rubbed it along Eric's instep. He stiffened in more ways than one and looked at her. It was a long time since a woman had rubbed her foot along his instep. In fact, he wasn't sure if it had ever happened before, but hoped it wouldn't be the last. The steaks were thick and tender and perfectly cooked. The frites were crisp and golden and hot, the salad green and oily and peppery, the wine smooth and copious, and the conversation flowed with laughter and much smiling, and as the evening wore on, Clovis noticed Jordan's hand resting on his arm longer than was necessary, and her finger stroking her lip, her tongue swirling around the edge of her glass, and her chair moving closer towards his. "Who wants dessert?" said Clovis. "I'm full," said Jordan. "And me," said Chrissy. "I fancy an Irish coffee," said Eric. "Deux Irish café, please," said Clovis. "Don't say it, Eric." The Irish coffees came, 2 glasses with a big creamy head. "Oh, that is good," said Eric. "That is so good." "Bit sweet," said Clovis. "It needs the sugar," said Eric. "Otherwise all the cream would sink to the bottom." "Naughty," said Chrissy, and she winked at Eric. "Excuse us," the 2 ladies said then in unison. "Of course," said Clovis. They left the table together and headed for the toilets. "What am I doing?" said Clovis. "I'm married." "I know," said Eric. "I'm not, though." "I must be mad," said Clovis. "What goes on tour stays on tour," said Eric. "What?" "It's an expression," said Eric. "It's not hurting anyone." "What are you talking about? It's hurting my marriage." I can't decide for you, said Eric, but I know what I'm doing. You still don't think it's odd, two women like that pretending to be interested in two old geezers like us? Chrissy's not pretending, believe me. Women always pretend, said Clovis. They're good at it. Remember Meg Ryan in When Harry Met Sally? Fooled everyone. That was in a restaurant, said Eric. We're in a restaurant, said Clovis. We are now. When she comes back, we're going. Where? Her place. Have fun. Hope you've got the energy left. I intend to. I hope so. Clovis called for the bill and paid it before the two women came back. Did you pay for us? Said Jordan. You shouldn't have done. How much do we owe you? Forget it, said Clovis. It's the least we could do for such wonderful company. You're flattering us, said Jordan. Come back for a nightcap. It wasn't a question. Eric took Chrissy's hand and they walked ahead. Our place or yours? Said Jordan. Ours, said Clovis. No, ours, said Jordan firmly. It's cosy, you'll see. Eric said, as long as it has a bed, I'm happy. That's naughty, said Chrissy. No, I meant, said Eric. I know what you meant, said Chrissy, and squeezed his hand. They sat in the darkened living room and drank some more wine. Chrissy stood up first and held her hand out to Eric, who glanced at Clovis and Jordan, who were kissing on the other sofa. He stood up and took Chrissy's hand and followed her out of the room. Now you, said Jordan, and stood up. Clovis and Jordan were together in her bedroom. She took his head in her hands and kissed him on the lips. Why me? Said Clovis. Why not? She said. You know why not, he said. You're cute, she said. I'm old. Not that old, and I like a bit old. She undressed and stood before him. It was a long time since he had seen a naked woman that wasn't his wife. It was nice. Make sure you listen in to stage 15 of Misspoke if you want to find out what happens to our two intrepid couples. And now another of my affectionate cycling monologues, and this one is called Better in the Old Days. And if you're a member of a cycling club, and there are any older members, by which I mean 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s even, maybe some of this will sound a little bit familiar. So anyway, I was looking through these old photos and I found one from 1972. I did a 10-mile event on the old G11 course. I remember that I had my Roberts with the down-tube shifters, of course, Campag, obviously, and a Brooks saddle. Things were better then. You didn't have all this Di2 crap and carbon frames. Steel was the thing. More comfortable and durable it is. It's all crap now. We didn't wear helmets. You didn't need one. We were hard then. Of course, you had a lot of head injuries and cracked skulls, but that was just bad luck. You want my honest opinion. I did a short 22, I remember, in Charlie Farnsburn's. Now there was a rider, him and Alf Engers. I saw them do a 2-up. They did the time then, still hasn't been beaten. That was on the old G12 course. It's different now. It starts in the lay-by and ends at the junction with the A22. You must have heard of Alf Engers. He set some records, still hasn't been beaten. He was like Beryl Burton, only not a woman, obviously, if you know what I mean. I was wearing toe clips, not those Ponzi Speedplay pedals. I wore my normal work shoes and wool shorts. They sagged like a bastard when it was damp, which was all the time. But if it was good enough for Alf Engers and Eddie Merckx and Tom Simpson, and it was, I saw him back in the day. Did I tell you that? He did Paris Best Paris. His lowest gear was 39.23. Can you imagine that? Half the riders today wouldn't get up Star Hill if they didn't have a compact and a 28 on the back. They don't know. They've been born. I tell you, we were a different breed back then. It's not a bike. It's not about the bike, though. You look at the club evening 10. Colin Smith did the fastest time ever wearing hobnail boots and a 3-piece suit straight up. And the club record, Brighton and back from Croydon, is under 4.5 hours. You can hardly credit that now, but it's true. Average 25 miles an hour. You don't see that now. Of course, the roads were quieter then, with hardly any cars. The club was a lot bigger in those days. We used to get 40 or 50 on a club run. We used to take over the cafe. The club run on a Saturday used to do 70 or 80 miles. We didn't bother with a cafe stop. I mean, you didn't have coffee then. We made do with fish paste sandwiches and a flask of tea. There'd be all the old ports bombing along. I tell you, it was better in the old days. You should have been there. The old ports in that monologue is a reference to the Old Portland Cycling Club, a cycling club based in Bromley in Kent, in South London, which next year celebrates its 100-year anniversary. And if you think that is a reference to some of the old geezers in the club, well, you couldn't be further from the truth. And now a word from my sponsor. I don't actually have a sponsor for this podcast. So if you know anybody from large companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, wealthy companies, poor companies, companies on the verge of going broke, just get them to contact me and they can sponsor my podcasts and we can all get rich together. So rather than have a particular sponsor for this particular podcast, I'm going to choose a cycling piece of paraphernalia or kit that I think is particularly good. And my choice for stage 14 of Misspoke is the Wahoo Elemnt Roam cycle computer. Now, you're probably familiar with a Garmin and you're probably familiar with a Wahoo now because they've made great strides in the last few years and lots of people have them. And the Wahoo Roam, which is R-O-A-M, not as in the Italian city, has a number of data fields, the usual things: time-lapse, time of day, speed, elevation, heart rate, cadence, all the other bits and pieces. It's got a colour screen, which a number of Garmins have had for a while, but this is the first Wahoo to have a colour screen. And it has a very good mapping function, including rerouting ability. So if you put in a route and then you happen to go off route, it will tell you that you're off route and it will show you how to get back on the route. I've had a number of Wahoo Elements. I had the original Wahoo Element and then the Element Bolt, which was a smaller version, and now the Wahoo Elemnt Roam, which is a kind of middle-sized unit, and I'm very happy with it. Unfortunately, I'm not riding outside on the road during a period of coronavirus, and it's not much use in the house, so it sits in a drawer. But if you're looking for a cycle computer, I can highly recommend the Wahoo Elemnt Roam. And now another extract from my autobiographical memoir, My Life in Bikes. And we've actually reached a slight interlude in the story of my bike history journey, and this is about pedals, and it's called a pedal interlude. When I bought the Specialized Alley, I ordered it with clipless pedals, which I'd never used before. When I rode in my 20s, toe clips were still standard. I remember being on a cycling tour in the Dordogne and pulling up at a traffic light in a village beside a coffee shop. I didn't get my foot out of the pedal in time and slowly and oh so gracefully toppled over onto the pavement in front of the laughing French people. But toe clips were no longer in use. Clipless pedals had arrived. Unfortunately, I went to collect the bike but hadn't bought any proper cycling shoes with cleats, so ended up pushing the bike home. I must have looked like a right idiot. I bought Shimano SPD touring pedals for the Roberts, and they were fine, but they weren't racer pedals, so not suitable for the Cervelo. With the Cervelo, I bought Shimano race pedals and sleek, tight, carbon-soled shoes fitted with 3-point cleats. I continued to use Shimano pedals until I learned about speed play pedals, little round things like a big polo mint, but without the hole in the middle, and a complicated fixing system with a pedal fitted into the shoe cleat, as opposed to the shoe cleat fitting into the pedal. I remember when I bought the Bianchi, I got Celeste speed play pedals. They were the business. I was happy with speed play and thought they were cool. I think Bradley Wiggins used speed play and that was good enough for me, but they were a pain to use. You were supposed to lubricate them regularly and the shoe fitting was delicate and could get damaged if you walked in them too much. Speed play were aware of this and brought out their walkable design. This was like a yellow plastic surrounding the cleat, and when you got off the bike you put a yellow plastic cap on which would protect them. So I bought a pair and they weren't cheap. One year I cycled up to London when the Tour of Britain was on and locked the bike, put my plastic covers on and walked around. When I got back to the bike and checked my feet, I noticed that I had lost one of the plastic covers and I'd only had them a few weeks. This design fault enraged me, and so I decided there and then that I was finished with speedplay pedals and sold them all on eBay, including the Celeste ones. I tried time pedals, which are less common and therefore had rarity value. I don't remember much about them. They were okay, but I wasn't sold. So I tried classic look pedals and cleats, like everyone else, and they are now my go-to pedal until the next time. Look brought out a very expensive pedal with a carbon plate in them, which could be changed to adjust how tight the connection was between the cleat and the pedal. The ones I bought were so tight that I could hardly get my feet out and was fighting with the pedal every time I came to a stop and risked another faux pas like my French performance all those years ago. So I ordered a different carbon plate that would be less tight. The instructions said that they could be easily swapped over, but it turned out that it required a particular tool which I didn't own. So I bought the tool and still couldn't do it. So I had to go to the bike shop and ask them to change the pedal for me. It cost me 15 quid and I felt so ashamed. I continued to use Shimano SPD pedals on my winter bike, and in fact put them on the Bianchi when I went to Ventoux on the expectation that I might have to walk some of the way, which I did, but now find the pedal too small under the shoe and prefer my looks. I'm going to end stage 14 of the Misspoke Cycling podcast with a short story, and this story is called Brown Sauce. I should warn you, however, if you are of a delicate disposition, or if there are young people listening to this podcast, should young people be interested in a cycling culture podcast, that there is quite a lot of bad language, also known as fruity or foul language, in this particular short story. So I do apologise for that in advance. It's called Brown Sauce. Once on the Pilgrim's Way, Angela picked up the pace. Her legs spun the pedals with practised ease. She leaned forward, hands on the drops, feeling the wind flow through her helmet and over her short brown hair. She felt Eric pull along beside her. He seemed so much faster than her. Her heart was pounding and she was sucking in deep breaths, but Eric seemed to expend no more energy than if he was sitting on the sofa and watching TV. "You're doing fine," he said. "You're going great." "Oh, thanks," said Angela, "you patronising bastard." Eric grinned and pulled ahead. She dug into the pedals and chased after him and caught him at Cowpoo Corner. They crossed the M25 just near Pole Hill and turned left onto the Filston rollers. Angela was faster here, and she moved in front, touching 30 miles an hour on her Garmin, streaking past the hedgerows and farms. She stayed in front as they reached the outskirts of Shoreham Village, Eric sitting on her wheel and freewheeling much of the way. "You let me win, you bastard," she said, but she was smiling. "I didn't," said Eric. "Honest." "Well, maybe a bit. Anyway, it's not a race." "It's always a race with you, Eric." They dismounted at the Battle of Britain cafe. They ordered mugs of tea and bacon doorstops from the nice lady in the cafe, surrounded by drawings of Spitfires and Lancaster bombers. They went outside and sat at one of the tables on the grass. Angela removed her helmet, gloves and gilet and let the warm sun dry the sweat on her forehead and arms. She leaned back in her chair and felt the cool breeze on her face. The boy brought the sandwiches and their tea. "Have you got any brown sauce?" said Eric. "And red," said Angela. "Can I have red sauce, please?" The boy returned with 2 bottles of sauce. He looked about 11. "Thanks," said Angela. "What's your name?" "Jack," said the boy. "Thanks, Jack," said Angela. She upturned the bottle, opened the sandwich and slathered sauce all over the still steaming bacon. The melting butter had soaked through the bread and was hardening on the plate like a little patch of sunshine. Eric took a bite from his sandwich and the brown sauce oozed out and slid down his chin. He said with his mouth full of bacon and bread and sauce. "What do you think about Dad?" said Angela. "He's a cunt," said Eric. "I hope he dies." "Don't say that," said Angela. "You don't know." "I do know," said Eric. "I do know he's gone and left Mum. I know he walked out on her. I know he's behaved like a cunt. I know he's treated her like shit all her life. He's a cunt." Angela ate her sandwich. There were tears in her eyes. "He's still our dad," she said. "I still love him. I can't help it. You do too, really, even if he did walk out on Mum. And us, sis. Don't forget us. He walked out on us too. And no, I don't." "Yeah, I know," said Angela. There were others in the garden now, some ramblers, an elderly couple, some mountain bikers, members of a cycling club, people come to look round the museum. Angela sipped her tea. "At least he's not having an affair," said Eric. Angela stopped eating and looked at him. She spoke slowly, hesitantly. "Has Mum spoken to you?" "What about?" "About Dad. Has she spoken to you in the last few days?" "What do you mean, sis? I've been away, you know that. I only got home last night." "I thought she phoned you." "She did. She phoned me yesterday morning before I got on the plane. She wanted me to bring her some duty-free fags. She said she was going to start smoking again." "What did you say?" "I said no. I said I wouldn't. I said that was not the answer." "She'll only buy them in the shops," said Angela. "I know. That's what I realised, so I did get them. I'll give them to her later. Benson and Hedges. He finished his sandwich. So why hasn't she told me, sis? It's nothing, really. I just thought she'd spoken to you is all. You won't get out of it like that, sis. You're a shit liar. You always have been. Is he having an affair then? The cunt. I knew it. She didn't want to tell you, not with your exams coming up and everything, said Angela. She didn't want you to be upset. Upset? Upset? Of course I'm fucking upset. Why am I, a child who has to be sheltered from bad news? I'm 21. I'll kill him. I'll fucking kill him. Who's the cunt? Please don't use that word all the time. It's horrible. It's not, said Eric. It's a perfect word and it fits him to a T. Cunt. Cunty. Cunty cunt. He's a cunt. And so is she. What if it's not a woman? Said Angela. You're fucking shitting me. Dad is fucking some bloke. I don't fucking believe this. Who is it? Mum doesn't know, said Angela. It may not be a bloke. What do you mean? It either is or it isn't. He hasn't said, said Angela. He hasn't said it's another man, but he hasn't said it isn't. Mum's so upset. I tell you, he's got a fucking screw loose, said Eric. I always hated him. Did you know that? Always. That's not true, said Angela. Listen to Daddy's little girl, said Eric. He can't do anything wrong in your eyes, can he? You're always his favourite. That's not true, said Angela again. There were tears in her eyes and she dabbed at them with her napkin. She put her sunglasses back on to hide the puffiness around her eyes. He hasn't texted me, she said, or phoned me, or anything. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about anyone, said Eric, except himself, except his cunt self and his cunt tart or his cunt fancy man. I never want to see him or hear from him again. I hope he dies, and soon. You're horrible, said Angela. Let's go, sis, said Eric. I don't want to talk about him or think about him. They got back on their bikes. We'll go back via Cockermouth, said Eric. That's a hard climb. Take your mind off it. Cockermouth. Maybe that's what he's doing to her now. Or him. Stop it, said Angela. You're disgusting. Angela got home first. Eric tried, but this time he couldn't catch her.